Hello, and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions, and today we're going to talk about physical therapy and psychotherapy under one roof with Chloe Tudor here, who's the co-founder of For Health's Sake. And Chloe is a massage therapist and kinesiotherapist, I believe, right? In Toronto, Canada. She has a successful three-location multidisciplinary practice in the Toronto area, which includes physiotherapy, chiropractic care, massage, psychotherapy, naturopathy, acupuncture, and osteopathy. So a fantastic one-stop shop and coordinated approach there for her patient care. And she's also a practice promotions client. So today, Chloe's going to talk with us about how she's built her practice and how she's marketed that truly multidisciplinary practice and why bringing psychotherapy and physiotherapy together, may go together better than you think. So, Chloe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the show. So let's dive right in. What made you decide to bring physiotherapy and mental health together in the same practice?
Yeah, well, we always talk about the mind-body connection, yet most clinics keep the physical in one side and the mental health in the other. So I felt like this was a huge gap, especially here in Toronto. And I recognized that there was a big benefit to clients, especially clients with chronic pain or more complicated pain, in integrating it together. But I do want to be clear that we didn't start with psychotherapy. We actually added that about a year after practicing. And this is something that I think is really important as business owners is to always stay curious and ask questions. So when talking to my client base, I was hearing that a lot of people started mental health and psychotherapy was being talked about more. And I realized most people have benefits for psychotherapy and it's a huge additive value. And I
Mhm.
felt like we were missing out on something. So we added it in about a year of opening. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I always used to joke with my patients when I was treating patients, and I would say that you know physical therapy was 60% psychology and 40% actual care
Yeah,
with
it's
the patient, and
true.
it's so true, right? I mean,
Yeah.
your mind controls your body, right?
Yeah.
And often when a patient is coming in, especially if they have chronic pain and a long-term pain symptoms, right? They are going through all kinds of medical doctors and I
Yeah.
call it the medical merry-go-round, right? They don't
Yeah.
get answers. They're ping-ponging everywhere. They start to have, mental health issues because of the chronic pain, and that facilitates more pain. And so it's this kind of merry-go-round of things. So I
Yeah.
love the way that you approach that. Like, hey, we needed to have a different approach here and something else that we could add on to help our patients get, a more holistic approach.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Like, yeah, I'm sure you know this as well, but when you have chronic pain, your brain starts creating new patterns, right? So sometimes you need that mental health side to help break the patterns that are being made and the roadmaps that have been created. And trauma, especially any clients with trauma, which a lot of clients have that, it really they're missing out on such an important piece. So what's been really cool about this integrative approach is clients that have been like struggling for a long time, we're actually seeing the biggest changes with them now. And now we attract a whole other group of clients because of this offering. Like the complicated and interesting injuries I find is like a lot of the clients that come to us now.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, do you find that people reach out to you because of uh, your treatment programs, and then then they're exposed to, hey, we also have psychotherapy to help you through this process, or do they come for the psychotherapy first and then also the physical
Yeah,
component? I'm curious on that side.
that's a good question. I do think it's a bit of both. I think that a lot of people read Google reviews, and as soon as you start down our Google reviews, you're going to see a lot of, I was dealing with this for 10 years and it was controlling my life and like really intense experiences that have changed. So I
Yeah.
think that's a big one. And I think our SEOs of how we've been like embedding that chronic pain and really like interesting stuff with trauma. I think that
Mhm.
we're that different space here in Toronto that people find.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, I remember working in inpatient rehab in the hospitals. And I worked actually for a little bit at the brain injury center in Orlando. And what was interesting there was it was a very integrated approach. So you had PT, you had OT, you had speech, you had mental health, you had a physiatrist, a physician. And so we have that from an inpatient perspective where we're bringing mental health, as part of the whole treatment, right, to a
Yeah.
patient at that level, but it doesn't seem to carry over into the outpatient setting, which is
Yeah.
right. And so what you've
Yeah.
done there is you've actually taken that kind of model from the inpatient setting and made it more of an outpatient setting.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that, but yeah.
And so obviously there's it's a bit of a different approach here. So did you have any initial struggles in marketing this or explaining your practice to the public?
Um, so marketing has been interesting, and it is something that I feel like is forever changing, and you just have to be adaptive and creative with it. In terms of marketing, the physio, for example, physiotherapy, chiropractic care, and then the psychotherapy, they do vary quite a bit. So somebody that's looking to add mental health to their practice, I think it's important to recognize, and I always find this so interesting, but for mental health clients, people look for somebody that walked a similar path as them, and they're
Mhm.
more interested in commonalities around the stresses that they may have had in the past and what they've overcome. And for example, like their ethnicity or their sexuality or all of those things, religion, people are searching those particular points when finding a therapist.
Interesting.
So our marketing around psychotherapy will draw on those keywords that never you would never bring those up for a physiotherapist, right?
Mhm.
So it's been something that we definitely were realizing. We'd get calls asking for a therapist who's a single mother or, a Black therapist, things like that, a Muslim therapist. So we realized that we had to adjust our advertising to make sure that it's reflecting on our team and what we can offer to help that community.
Very interesting. Yeah, I could see how that would be, and you certainly sometimes can feel like you're on an island when you're dealing with chronic pain, right? And all the
Yeah.
mental anguish that goes with that. So I could see how you're going to be a bit more particular and looking for people. Has anybody else been through this before, right? And
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
imagine having the reviews is really critical, case studies, things that could be explained. Then they can align and say there is someone like me that's been through this, and they have helped them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of your other question about explaining yourself,
Mhm.
I always say for all business owners, have you read the book, Building a Story Brand?
Yeah, Donald Miller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like it's so important for all business owners to read this because, yes, we're a multidisciplinary practice, but what is it outside of that? And it has changed over the years. And now it's like we improve your health and happiness. So, in terms of how we describe what we are, that's what we say now. And I think it's more clear.
Yeah, because it could get very
Yeah.
wide, right, in terms of what you're saying about yourself. But that's the key. And
Yes.
yeah, for anybody out there that hasn't read it, it's a great book, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Yeah.
Makes it's like how do you make the complex and bring it simple is really
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah,
and so that you get so people can actually keep it in their head like, oh, this is exactly what they do, and that piques their interest, and then they want to learn more about you
exactly.
with that. Um, and then from the mental health aspect of it, how do like in your practice, you obviously started with more the physical disciplines, and you brought the mental health in. How does someone as they come in go through their process with you? Like, is there a particular step-by-step process that they go through as far as an evaluation? I'm curious at
Mm,
how, because you have many disciplines that come in.
yeah.
How does that work?
We have a bit of both. So we do have a high internal referral rate. So sometimes a client will be directed specifically to a therapist and they'll start there. But for new clients coming in, we're trying to bring them to our care coordinator who is able to ask all the questions around their goals, what their concerns are, and then put them on a treatment plan that makes the most efficient
Hmm,
recovery for that person.
I like that.
So
Yeah.
that's what I really like. I think having somebody at the top that can really help direct clients because it can be overwhelming and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be. And I think there's so much information out there that if we just simplify it and put them on a plan and really have guided experts of knowing this will help you, then that's what I think has been bringing a lot of success to us too.
Awesome. Chloe, I think you're really leading the pack here with your model in your practice. And I always have said this to many people over the years is that especially in Canada, like the Canadian model of the holistic approach and integrated services is something that's a little bit different than we have here in the United States. The United
Mm,
States, it tends to be a bit more segmented. Like you tend to have more PT clinics just on their own, and then
yeah.
sometimes they'll have an OT, or sometimes they'll have speech integrated. A lot of times, if they're doing, stroke patients, or if they have pediatric care. but for the most part, it's quite segmented, right? And then you have mental health
Yeah.
therapists off on their own, chiropractic off on their own. But what I really love about the Canadian model is that you do find a lot more multidisciplinary practices, and I really think that in North America we I've been saying this for a while, like we really need to go in that direction because
Yeah,
the public wants that. The public wants
exactly.
that integrated approach, not a segmented approach. And you've taken it that step further where the mental health aspect is more incorporated into all those other services because you have chiropractic, you have physio, you have acupuncture, you have massage, you have osteopathy, you have,
Mm,
psychotherapy. So you have a lot of offerings for
yeah.
someone, all kinds of different problems that you could help from that aspect, right?
Yeah. And I think that that is a good point to draw into is that I think that is where health is moving. We're moving into this holistic approach and beyond the psychotherapy part of our business, tapping and knowing when to lean into Eastern medicine and when to lean into Western medicine and how they can actually work together and they work better together rather
Mhm.
than thinking, oh, it needs to be just physio and chiro here and acupuncture and osteopath is boohoo. And there, a lot of people would be surprised of what one would actually benefit them more. So I think that is also a really neat part that is missing. And I do see that that's where health clinics are moving towards.
Absolutely. And it's what the public really wants too, right?
Yeah,
And I think especially here in the States where we have a little bit of a different health system model, right?
yeah.
And it's becoming more and more out of pocket, very high expense insurance, very high deductibles and things for our patients that have to pay. You have this really growing market of people that are seeking health and wellness type services to kind of supplement that traditional healthcare model, right? And I
Mm,
think the clinics that are going to thrive in this new economy are the ones that integrate and bring more services in for patients. One, I think it offers a much better treatment option for patients, right? And
yeah,
two, from a business perspective, right, you're able to have multiple lines of service in
yeah.
your business, right, that each create its own profitability. And because you have this integrated approach, if you are cash based for some services, you could have a bit more premium, payment
Hmm.
for this, right? And so I
Yeah,
think from a business model, it makes a lot of sense too, and also from a treatment,
yeah,
it makes a lot of sense.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And so when you were starting off your practice here, and you initially started to market that, how did you market it then, and what's changed now?
Yeah. So we did something very different that I don't know. Maybe you'll know if I haven't heard of many clinics doing this, but we actually started as a corporate health company, which me and my business partner, Katie, we're both RMTs, registered massage therapists, and we would go into offices in Toronto and provide on-site massage to the entire staff. So we were growing a lot in that. We were in like 30 plus companies, a lot of tech companies like Uber, Facebook, Entertainment One. Then we were in banks and law firms, and they were all around our downtown clinic. So what was cool is people would see us in the space, they would hear for health's sake, they would hear about us, and then they'd follow us after and want to like see us more regularly. So it was such a great way of just getting people to come in, and it was really effective and cost effective too. But then COVID hit, and the entire thing, obviously it stopped for quite a while actually, and we're starting to get back into some companies, but it's a lot slower, and many employees don't even go into the office anymore, so that completely
Really?
changed.
Yeah.
So during COVID, right when we were back in, it was around the time that we were searching, okay, we didn't have professional website, we didn't have SEOs, we didn't have any of that foundation that you need as a business because we were thriving off of this corporate wave. So that's when we found Practice Promotions, and I'm so glad that we came across your company because Canada, as far as I could tell, does not have anything similar to what you guys offer. And now I don't think I would ever go back from Practice Promotions, just because it has allowed me to have a lot more confidence that things are working, that foundation's built, and then I can focus on other ways to be creative to market outside of that.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it's great to hear. It makes me very happy to hear your success there. And you're right. I mean, there's a million and one different digital agencies and stuff to do there, but there's very, very, very few in the rehabilitation space, right?
Yeah,
And a lot what the mistake that I see often is that people think that, hey, let me just work with a local company because they know my local area.
yeah,
The reality is that that's not going to be the most useful. The most useful is actually knowing your industry, right? And knowing what
yeah,
patients are looking for and how you speak to them. And
Yeah.
that's what's going to get you to connect with people in the area. So obviously you've probably done some changes, complete, changes in your
Yeah.
strategy as your company's evolved over the years, and that's a testament to your skill too, being able to pivot in COVID, right,
Yeah.
and kind of change that whole model of your practice. So now that you've incorporated so many different disciplines into your practice, we talked a little bit about the physio and the psychotherapy. The way that we market is a little bit differently, but what are some of the other things that you've done, to market those and those strategies into your practice?
In terms of marketing, well, we work with you guys as well for our Google Ads. We work
Mhm.
with Justin, Practice Promotions, and he's been great. And it's something that we work pretty closely on, especially because I don't believe you have a lot of clients that have mental health. So
No.
it's been, I think, a learning curve for everybody, and we're working together and experimenting. And Justin's been great for that because he'll meet whenever we want to meet, and we'll kind of talk about keywords that are popular right now, and we'll go through it. But like I said before, the Google marketing for that I think is quite different in how he creates those ads for us. Initially, I was doing the Google ads, and I'll be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like trying it. I didn't know the results. And this is what's given me a lot of confidence with practice promotions as well, because I love looking every time we get the monthly kind of results. So, email of how everything's doing and where most of our leads are coming from. I love to see those numbers. And it's like reassuring that I know where our clients are coming from. Where in the beginning we were just kind of going with the flow and hoping. And yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. And yeah, Google Ads, it's so complicated. And Google's a company that makes their money off of you doing ads. So they want to make it simple for you to start, but it's very complicated. And so you can easily spend a lot of money with them, and they're designed to get you to spend a lot of money to them. So
Yeah.
it's being able to really dial it into what are people searching for out there, and how can you connect with them the best within that system, and not being on certain networks there. For example, like the gaming network, like you don't need to be on pulling up on ads with kids playing on their tablet, right? So
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot that goes into that part of it. Um, so obviously you have these different lines of business in your business, right? And so for you, what have you found to be the most profitable for you in your business?
I actually found well, psychotherapy is one of our more profitable ones, and that's for a couple reasons. One, we also are virtual,
Mm.
so it allows us to grow and continue to grow as much as we can, not limited by space. And obviously, we don't have rent and that high expense to deal with, so our ROI is a lot higher already.
Sure.
And then outside of that, the price points for psychotherapy is a lot higher than, for example, a massage.
Mhm.
For mental health, usually like our lowest is you start with individual on about 160 for a 50-minute session, where a massage pre-tax is like 116 for the hour. So there's a big difference there. But then if you have relationship therapy, it goes to like 230 for the hour. And then if you have family therapy, it goes even higher. So
Mm.
the ROI for psychotherapy is by far the highest at our clinic.
Wow, that's really interesting. So again, another good point there for thinking outside the box and doing something that's good for the patient. Can you bring a model like that into your clinic, right? And so I'm curious in regards to that, did you have to overcome any challenges with compliance or regulatory issues in your province?
It wasn't there wasn't any significant issues with adding psychotherapy to our team, but we did not have that service before, so we had to learn a lot about it. So certain things, for example, confidentiality on our booking system with our chart notes, you need to make sure that nobody else can read the charts other than the therapist.
Mm.
Privacy within the space. We hired people to insulate the walls. We had sound machines everywhere. We want to make sure that nothing's heard and they feel that safety there.
Yeah.
And then the other big part that I think is really important if somebody is considering to add mental health is the training around admin, because they're going to handle a lot of sensitive topics, and clients are calling in about they could be in a mental health crisis, and we need to make sure that we're handling that correctly. So we have a whole document of resources available of what to provide them with if they're calling about X, Y, and Z, right?
Do you want more freedom in your clinic? Then you need to work on your business, not just in it. The top practice owners know that they need a marketing system that consistently attracts patients from the internet. And at Practice Promotions, we've helped hundreds of practice owners skyrocket to the top of Google and get more new patients from online. Go to practicepromotions.net/kit to get our free practice marketing sample kit. It includes all our digital marketing tips and tricks that will get you new patients from Google. That's practicepromotions.net/kit, KIT, for a free marketing kit. And now back to the show.
Very interesting. Yeah, so obviously some nuances there to learn. Like you said, some
Mhm.
training with the support staff there, and then just making sure that, obviously, I don't think it would be an issue in the U.S. to if as long as you had a licensed provider, right, in the space.
Yeah,
And then but like you said, there's probably other regulatory things, just making sure that confidentiality is a higher
yeah,
priority, right?
yeah,
So very interesting the way that you looked at that, learned that, obviously implemented that in your practice. But again, it's just like this is a big thing that I'm really pushing on with clinics here in the US is starting to think outside the box. Because again, I think Canadian clinics are more ahead of the US clinics in that integrated approach. And
Mhm.
we really need to mimic that here in the United States because it's much better for the client. It's much better for your
Yeah,
business too.
yeah. So
And so,
surprising to hear Canada's leading the way for something. I feel like it's always the other way around. So that's great.
yeah, no, I totally think that. Um, and so you have three clinic locations now. We were just talking, just opened that third clinic. Congratulations, and you have over 40 employees. So in business, sometimes we have that inflection point where it's like you kind of grinding along, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have this this expansion. And so I'm curious for you with for health's sake company, where did it really take off in terms of growth, and what was it?
For us, I would say opening the second location, like starting from a one clinic. We knew we were doing well, we knew we were busy, and then, but it's such a big step to move to that second one because you just have to optimize everything, the procedures, the policies. You're, you're leading a whole other team of people. So I think it gave us a lot of confidence. And then once that started and we see it being successful, we opened our third location. And this was the biggest inflection point, I would say, because this is our first franchise location
Okay.
and a whole other learning
Yeah.
opportunity.
That's awesome. Well, you certainly, again, that's part of being able to take that invention, right? That kind of model,
Mhm,
and all the things that you figured out along the way, be able to put that together to playbooks, and then being able to launch that, right? So that there's plenty of other people that want to have that opportunity.
mhm.
Franchise is a fantastic thing, and
Yeah.
we see that I think we see a little bit of that happening now in our industry. Some there are some franchises out there that
Okay.
have developed certain things, but again, I think it's a model that is not quite there yet in our industry.
Yeah.
Like it's starting to happen. So you're kind of on
Okay.
that cusp, and I think you've got a great model to share there, and I think
Yeah.
it's going to do really well.
Thank you.
And so I'm curious for you. Obviously, you handle a lot of hats here. So do you still treat patients in the clinic?
I do. I actually this year I'm cutting down from 3 days a week of just their half days of being one-on-one with clients to 2 days a week.
Mhm.
And the goal is to fully get out of that because I just love business. I'm obsessed with business. I'm constantly reading and learning, and I just want to keep growing the brand, especially now that we franchised. There's a whole other part to learn and opportunity for other people to open clinics. So that's what is exciting me at the moment.
That's awesome. I love it. And then, is there anything that you've done, like in the way that you approach things to manage your time between the business owner and being a massage therapist, kind of any mindset that you've done there?
Ah, my brain is always probably like yours. I'm just always thinking about a million things at once.
Hmm.
And I like to move fast. So I think as soon as, yeah, my brain is always going. In terms of managing, I guess it's just moving fast. It's like finding out what the important things are and just like getting it done efficiently, but well.
Yeah,
Um, I think of massage, it's funny because it's physically demanding, but I think of that as my break. I'm like, okay, this is my opportunity to be that curious business owner again, just get to know clients, what they're looking for, so it can maybe help with the business side of things as well at the same time. But
hmm
I take it as more of like, okay, this is a break from me as a business owner.
that's a funny way to look at it,
Yeah.
right? I think that's interesting that you brought that up because I think that might be some of the ways that I see for physiotherapists, right? That they do what they know so well, which is to treat
Mhm.
patients, right? And what they don't may what they may not know so well is the business side, right? And that could be
Yeah.
they're trying something, but it's not going right, and
Yeah.
they don't want to deal with the HR headaches or whatever may be going on, right? And it's just way
Yeah.
easier to go treat patients because they know that very well and very good at it.
Yeah.
So we like to, it's called hobby horsing, right? So
Yeah.
like the old days, you'd be on a hobby horse, right? So you go with the things that you really love to
Yes.
do, right? And you got to be passionate about your business, of course. You've got to love treating patients, and that's kind of your underlying purpose for what you do.
Yeah.
But I think what I really like what you talked about earlier was that the way that you've shifted and started to see what you needed to do to give yourself time for the business, right? And you
Yeah.
realize that I need to make sure I've got time for my business, especially the bigger that it gets.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of that inflection point or that sticking point for a lot of practice owners is that they still are very much treating a full load of
Yeah.
patients and then expecting to do all the business aspects on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's gonna burn you out. But
Yeah. It's really hard to wear both hats. And I think it's not something that if you're wearing both hats, one of them is going to suffer, right? So I
mhm,
think you got to recognize that. And I do know like a lot of business owners that are still so in the practice that they're only stalling the growth of others. That's kind of how I think about it. And it depends on your goals, of course. Maybe your goal is just to have a flourishing one clinic, but if it's beyond that, you have to learn how to pull back and to be like, okay, it's their time to shine, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And you become the bottleneck in the business, right? At some point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
For its
exactly.
growth. Awesome. And so for you, as you've worked on your business and your franchising part now, like what's your main source of new patients and how do you know about that?
So I know that from my monthly reports from practice promotions. I love looking at the pie and like where most of our clients are coming from in our little pie graph. For us, our major pie is the organic search, which is good. You want that. So the SEO is the back coding there. It's working for us. I think it's about 70%. And then from there, it is Google Ads is a smaller piece, internal referrals, and then direct searches as well. I think that's our second biggest one. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a great healthy mix that you have there from a online business perspective, the way that patients are finding you. You want to have those chunks being the primary ones. Now, if for practices out there that if you're paying a lot of money and most of your business is having to come from, say, Facebook ads or Google ads, things like that, you don't have enough of that organic stuff built up
Yeah.
and the direct stuff too. The direct stuff is typically more like someone saw an email and they came to your website and signed up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is your kind of your current list, your referrals, things like
Yeah.
that. So that should be the biggest. So should your organic stuff, and then
Yeah.
the ads and everything else is less of a percentage. That's really a healthy
Yeah.
marketing business.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so we talked a little bit about ads here, and that's been an effective source of new patients for you. You know, before we started running your ads, you said you did a little bit of them before, and what were some of the challenges that you ran into with that?
So many. First of all, you're just not confident. I was just throwing money out there thinking, okay, we're going to take this as saving money because I'm going to just do it instead of hiring somebody to do it. But of course you're not. You're just wasting more money. I wasn't sure exactly which clients were coming in. Are they quality clients? I was kind of blinded with it. And I knew we needed to hire somebody to run the ads. And I do suggest everybody, if you're going to do Google Ads, just hire somebody because you will save more in the end. And then having those results and knowing your numbers is so important. I think a lot of businesses start off with you're just like off the hype of doing it and you just want to grow, 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 and you're not focused on all of those stats. But
Mhm.
then you got to slow down. You got to look at that because you want to know every month you're getting more new clients. You want to know every month you're getting more reactivated clients. And that's why I love the stat tracker as well that Practice Promotions, got us on because comparing week by week or month in January from the month before in January and knowing how you're doing is so reassuring that you're on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And so, what problems were you facing before you started working with us?
Not knowing our numbers, which is huge. How can you be a business owner if you don't know your numbers?
Mhm.
Um, the thing is, we have a strong community here in Toronto, and I think that allowed us to get away with it because our internal referrals is really strong, and I think our team at Practice Promotion says it's stronger than a lot of other places. And I think there's just that allowed us that breathing room before we jumped on. But I would say that the biggest struggle is just not knowing your numbers and having confidence around that. And like I said, the foundation built to know everything is at least doing what it should be, and anything else is like a bonus that we work on.
Yeah. And that I hear time and time and time again when I talk to practice owners is that they just don't know what's working.
Yeah.
And it's easier to get the numbers from within the clinic, like how many visits, how many schedules, how many cancellations, like all these kind of stuff. We keep
Yeah.
a lot of eyes on that, right? And we've got some great tools within the clinic EMRs and stuff to give us that data. But when it comes to marketing, a lot of times we don't have very good information in front of us, and we don't have good tracking systems in place. And so we kind of hope that something will work, and we're like, I think it's working, right? We're busy. And then all of a sudden the next week you're like, what happened? We don't have any new patients. Where did they go? And you're frustrated and you're like, oh, it's not working. So there's a lot of confusion that happens around marketing just because a lot of times there's not very good tracking and numbers, like you said, in place for you to make those right decisions.
Yeah. And I think there's so many marketing companies, like every day we're embedded with emails from people trying to pitch whatever marketing service. And they often sound too good to be true. If you're not guaranteed 30 clients, we'll get your money back and like all of these things. So as a business owner, you're curious, you want to try it, but it's expensive to try marketing. And me and Katie, we wasted a lot of money just being optimistic about trying different initiatives that are, coming to us. And I say wasted money because they're all learning lessons, but now we don't even play with other marketing companies that come to us. We're just sticking with you guys, and we're sticking with Google Ads because that's the one that we see the numbers and we just feel confident in, rather than just throwing money and seeing where it's stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really the traditional model is let's throw some money at it and see what happens.
Yeah.
But you need a much more structured an approach. And like you said, there is a million and one marketing agencies out there. They're typically very small, like one or two people kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to promise you the world to get started because they need business,
Yeah.
but they don't necessarily can deliver on that because they don't have really the bandwidth or the expertise in order to do that, right? So obviously we've worked with you on a lot of different stuff here. So how did practice promotions help you?
Well, I feel like I've talked about it quite a bit. For one, we have a professional website that just looks aesthetically way better than what we were doing before. The SEOs is a big one, knowing that that's working for us. We're being found organically. Before, we were so word of mouth that now it's cool because often I'll ask clients, like, how did you find us? Oh, it's just a Google search. And that never was the case before. It was like a friend of a friend of a friend. And that's cool too. But now I'm like, okay, so we're populating on Google now. Like we're being seen. But yeah, practice promotions, it's the confidence piece and just knowing that I feel like we're more professional, and we're still only 6 years, but we're competing and potentially outperforming a lot of these clinics that have been around way too long we have. And I think that like having a company like you guys really allowed us to plant that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, and I remember myself learning this a long time ago in business, and that is that you promote and brand yourself way higher than you actually are. And
Yeah.
then you bring your services up to that level,
Yeah.
right? Versus
Yeah.
the other way, which we traditionally try to think about how can we elevate our services, how can we elevate, within the clinic, and then okay, the marketing's sort of down here. But if it's the
Yeah.
other way, you can create the demand, then you've got the fuel to build the
Yeah.
business and rise up to it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious for you as you've opened up this third clinic, you're going into the franchise model with that. What do you think the future holds for HealthSafe?
So I hope to just continue to grow our brand into different communities. With the franchise, it kind of started very organically, and it happened by just therapists saying, can I open a clinic with you, or can I own part of your clinic? And we were saying no to people just because few reasons. One, me and Katie knew we had a good thing going on. Adding another business partner creates something, or it takes a lot out of you to like be embedded in opening a new clinic and being there to doing all of those steps. So we just knew that the quality wouldn't be kept if we wanted to scale the way that we planned on. So we naturally fell across this franchising. And initially I hoped for licensing, but I realized that's not an option after talking to lawyers. Licensing doesn't make sense if you want any say of your business. So the franchising route is what we're doing. And I think what I love about it is that we're providing an opportunity for therapists or people that are like-minded and that we trust to continue to grow our brand into all these different communities, because I still think there's so many communities, especially in rural Canada, that do not have clinics like Eastern, Western, mental, physical under one roof. And I do think that we're going to provide so much more help to people that are suffering.
Yeah, that's a great approach. And I'm seeing a lot more of that franchising model starting to happen, right? And
Yeah.
I think what's exciting too is that you see there's certain and I understand like certain physios, right? That they want that opportunity to have their own business, right? And
Mm,
that's why I got into my own practice, or I'm sure that's why you got
yeah.
into your own practice too, because you're like, I can do this better, I can do this, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it takes a lot to figure it all out on your own.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to say, hey, I can own a portion of this, or I can have the certain amount
Yeah.
of the revenue from it, but everything's already ready for me to go. So it's I don't
Yeah.
have to figure things out. Boom, I can go
Yeah.
ahead and I got some winning combination ready to go. It's very
Yeah.
appealing, right, for those people that want to start.
Yeah. It was something at first I was like, okay, we had to sit back and be like, does this make sense? Like, why would somebody join us versus opening their own? And we did that research to really ask, like, if it doesn't make sense, we're not going to do it. And it was so obvious when I had all of it out there, like even money saved or time saved in building, leveraging, and just growing quicker, like having that support and like a mastermind of clinic owners. And then the biggest one is if you do plan to sell one day, to sell something that has multiple locations versus an independent also made sense. So to me, it was a no-brainer. And that's why like a light bulb clicked. And I was like, because in Canada, this isn't very common to franchise. I
Mm,
guess in the States, maybe it's becoming, but
very common, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, here there's the ones that are franchised, there's a couple like massage clinics and they're not the type, like they're cookie cutter franchises. They're
Hmm.
not, what we're doing.
Yeah, I think too, like you see that in multiple industries, not just in healthcare, but all kinds of industries here, especially in the States. You see more of the chains popping up, right? It's a
Yeah,
franchise model again, because there is a lot of people that like being an entrepreneur, right? They
yeah,
want that, they want to go for it, they want to have that dream, but they don't want to have to try and figure it all out on their own, and they know
yeah,
that if they can go into a franchise model, stuff's already ready for them to go, and they don't have to figure it all out, right? They can just
yeah,
go and be their own boss and do all the things that
exactly.
they want to do. So I think that we're going to continue to see more of that in the rehabilitation industry,
Yeah.
and obviously you're pioneering the way there with what you figured out with your model, and I think that's fantastic. So I know you're going to do really well
Thank
as you
you.
expand that. Um, so Chloe, any final words of advice for our listeners out there as a business owner?
Oh, well, in terms of as a business owner, I would just say to not forget the small stuff, because I think often people forget about creating a positive work environment and celebrating wins within the team. Like all the little things, like when we get a Google review from our physio, we'll send it to them, be like, look what you got, congratulate. Like all the little hype things that just make people feel important. And
Mhm.
that leads to an overall clinic success. And it sounds so basic, but so many of our therapists have said that they left a very different clinic setting and they're so grateful for what that is. So I feel like there needs to be a reminder of creating
Mhm.
that space, because then the rest will follow.
That's wonderful advice, and you're so right. It's the number one thing that's wanted in a job, in a career, right?
Mhm.
Is acknowledgement.
Yeah,
More than money, right? More than
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So you're so on the hitting the nail on the head with that. So fantastic, keep doing that. Yeah, build that winning team to build your
Yeah.
business. So. Awesome. Well, Chloe, thanks so much for being on the podcast with us here today and sharing your insights, and congratulations on all your success. And I wish you much success in your practice moving forward. To all our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to follow us on our podcast, also our YouTube channel, and all our other social media. We got tons of advice for you also on practicepromotions.net. So this is Neil Trickett from the Practice Marketing Podcast and Practice Promotions, wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.